They don't want you to know this, not because it's hidden, not because it's rare, and definitely not because it's hard to understand, but because the moment you truly understand how this works, you stop being a customer. You stop needing the systems they sell. You stop depending on fuel, electricity, expensive installations, and constant upgrades. You can sleep in minus 20 degrees Celsius in conditions where most people would panic, inside a van, inside a thin tent, even in the open, using something that costs less than a cheap meal, no diesel heater humming all night, no batteries draining in the dark, no fuel running out at the worst possible moment. And the uncomfortable truth is that this isn't new technology. It's been around for years. It's used by people who don't have the luxury of failure. The reason you don't hear about it is simple. There is no profit in something that works this efficiently at such a low cost. Entire industries are built on the idea that survival requires complexity, that comfort must be bought, that safety depends on systems you don't fully control. And yet there is a simple, almost primitive looking solution that breaks that illusion completely. Once you see it, once you understand it, you can't go back to thinking the same way again. It changes how you look at cold, how you look at gear, and how you look at dependence itself. Most people lose against the cold long before their body actually gives up, and it happens in their mind first. They approach the situation with the wrong question. They ask, how do I create more heat? And that question leads them down a path of consumption, of burning resources, of chasing warmth instead of controlling it. More fire, more fuel, more power, more devices. But that approach is fundamentally flawed because it treats cold as something you fight directly instead of something you manage. Real survival thinking flips that completely. It starts with a different assumption. Your body is already producing heat every single second you are alive. Your metabolism is a constant generator of warmth. Even at rest, you are producing energy. The real problem is not generation, it's loss. Heat is constantly escaping from your body through multiple channels at the same time, and unless you understand those channels, you are bleeding energy without even noticing it. The ground beneath you pulls heat away slowly but relentlessly. The air around you moves, even slightly, and strips warmth from your skin. Your body itself radiates heat outward like a small heater turned on in an open space. Survivors don't ignore these processes. They focus entirely on them. A soldier in a frozen mountain environment doesn't rely on plugging something into a wall. An alpinist suspended on an icy face cannot carry a heater with unlimited fuel. They survive because they treat heat as a resource that must be contained, protected, and recycled. The shift happens when you stop asking how to produce more warmth and start asking how to lose less of it. That shift alone changes everything. It turns you from someone reacting to the cold into someone controlling it. At first glance, the solution looks almost insulting in its simplicity. A thin, reflective bag that feels light, makes noise, and doesn't look durable. It doesn't look like advanced gear. It doesn't look like something that could stand between you and freezing temperatures. In fact, most people dismiss it instantly because it doesn't match their idea of what serious equipment should look like. But this reaction is exactly why it works so well for those who understand it. This is not just a bag. This is a bivy bag, and its simplicity hides its function. It is used by military units that operate in environments where exposure can kill within hours. It is used by rescue teams who need to stabilize a person's body temperature immediately. It is used by climbers who spend nights in conditions where there is no margin for error. The key difference between this and something like a basic emergency blanket is not the material alone, but the structure. A blanket is open. It cannot prevent airflow effectively. It shifts, it leaks, it allows convection to continue pulling heat away from your body. A bivy bag, on the other hand, encloses you. It creates a contained space, a microclimate where your body heat accumulates instead of escaping freely. When you are inside, you are no longer just covering yourself. You are isolating your entire thermal environment. This outside cold is still there, but it no longer interacts with you in the same direct way. The moment you understand that, the perception changes. It stops being a cheap piece of foil and becomes a controlled system. And that mental shift is critical because tools only work as well as the respect and understanding behind their use. Cold is not chaotic. It doesn't attack randomly. It follows consistent physical rules, and it always removes heat through the same three primary mechanisms. The first is conduction, which is direct contact between your body and a colder surface. When you lie down on the floor of a van on frozen ground or even on a thin surface, heat begins to flow out of your body into that colder material. It's not dramatic or immediate, which is why people underestimate it, but it is constant and cumulative. Over hours, it drains your body temperature like a slow leak. The solution is not complicated, but it is essential. You need a layer that traps air between you and the cold surface. Air is a poor conductor of heat, which makes it an effective barrier. Foam pads, sleeping mats, or even improvised layers create that separation and significantly reduce heat loss. The second mechanism is convection, which involves the movement of air. Even in what seems like a closed space, air is rarely still. Small drafts, slight movements, temperature differences all create circulation. Warm air around your body rises and is replaced by colder air, and this continuous exchange removes heat faster than most people realize. This is why people can feel cold even when they are technically sheltered. The solution here is to minimize or eliminate airflow around your body. This is where an enclosed system like a bivy bag becomes extremely effective because it traps air and prevents that constant exchange. The third mechanism is radiation, and it is often the least understood. Your body emits infrared radiation continuously, losing energy to the environment even without direct contact or airflow. This process is invisible but significant. Reflective materials can reduce this loss by bouncing that energy back toward your body. A bivy bag made with reflective material can reflect up to 97% of this radiated heat back, effectively recycling it. When you combine these three principles, reducing conduction, stopping convection, and reflecting radiation, you're no longer passively enduring the cold. You are actively controlling every pathway through which your heat can escape. When you look at the financial side, the contrast becomes even more extreme. A typical diesel heater set up for a van or small space may seem like a reasonable investment. At first, the unit itself can cost anywhere from $150 to $300 depending on quality. Installation adds additional cost, especially if you want it done properly. Then comes the ongoing expense, fuel. Night after night, week after week, winter after winter, you're feeding that system to maintain warmth. Over time, those costs accumulate far beyond the initial purchase. It's not unusual for the total to reach over $1,000, sometimes approaching $2,000 when everything is considered. And all of this depends on continued access to fuel, functioning components, and a system that can fail. In contrast, a bivy bag costs less than $10. It requires no installation, no maintenance, no external resources. It does not rely on supply chains or infrastructure. The difference in cost is obvious, but the deeper difference is independence. The money you are not spending is not just saved, it is redirected it becomes time, mobility, flexibility. It reduces the need to earn just to maintain a system. It removes a layer of dependency that most people don't even realize they have. You are not just choosing a cheaper option, you are changing your relationship with resources entirely. At the same time, it is important to understand that this is not a comfort solution, and treating it like one leads to mistakes. Inside a bivy bag, the experience is very different from a warm room or a heated vehicle. The material produces sound. With movement, the space is limited, which can feel restrictive over time. Moisture from your breath and body can create condensation inside. These are not flaws, they are natural consequences of a highly efficient system that traps heat and limits airflow. To use it correctly, you need to approach it with discipline. Breathing must be managed carefully, allowing some ventilation to prevent excessive moisture buildup. Clothing must be dry because even slight dampness reduces insulation dramatically. Insulation beneath your body remains critical as the bag alone does not eliminate conduction. The system should be mostly sealed to retain heat, but not completely closed off in a way that traps too much moisture. Consistency in these practices is what determines success. In cold environments, small mistakes do not stay small. They accumulate, and over time, they can become dangerous. This is not a casual tool. It is part of a system that requires awareness and correct use. When used properly, it is highly effective. When used carelessly, it becomes uncomfortable and inefficient. There is a broader idea behind all of this, something that goes beyond one piece of gear. The most reliable solutions are often the simplest ones, the ones that do not depend on complex systems or constant input. This kind of thinking existed long before modern technology, passed down through experience rather than theory. People understood how to stay warm not by overpowering the environment, but by working with it, by minimizing loss and maximizing what they already had. That idea still applies. Simplicity is not a limitation, it is a form of efficiency. It removes points of failure, it reduces dependency, it focuses on what actually matters. This is not about luxury or comfort, it is about understanding the core mechanics of survival and using them to your advantage. Once you see it this way, your perspective changes. You begin to question other systems, other assumptions, other necessary expenses. And if you have ever experienced real cold, not just discomfort, but conditions where your body is under real stress, then you already understand how important this knowledge is. So think about it carefully. What is the lowest temperature you have ever actually slept in, not briefly endured, but spent the night in? No exaggeration, no storytelling, just the real number, because that number says more about your understanding of cold than anything else, than